Hello and welcome to the Cuyamonga Institute, our Q&A conversation for Exploration series. I'm Paul Robert, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, and along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, our advisors, our volunteers, and supporting members, we do want to thank you for joining us today. The Cuyamonga Institute is an independent nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness and the human experience following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist, Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And our focus is reflected in three main areas: experience, education, and exploration. We respect the path of academic balance, the creative pursuit of science, while advancing, conserving, and restoring a direct experience of the deeper human connection to all of life. It's part of our mission to expand our own experiential research with the multidisciplinary understanding that's available to us today. So as an educational institution, we take an open approach and we invite scholars in related fields to help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration. That's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. And on these weekly Sunday discussions, there's been a full spectrum of topics from the arts to the sciences and everything in between. So much more. You can visit our website at cuyamongainstitute.com. All of these presentations are free and it's a nonprofit. Of course, we want to invite you to become a supporting member, to join our community circle. And we want to thank you, the community members who continue to support the mission of the Cuyamonga Institute. Today, we have the great pleasure of talking with a filmmaker that challenges us, using film as a platform for social change, amplifying the voices of marginalized communities. We're all on a quest, and film is a compelling and a vivid way to share it, bringing us along as an audience to explore the human condition, looking at shared experience, challenging assumptions and worldviews, and inspiring action. Documentaries can ask some pivotal questions and help usher our emerging global community. By preserving and sharing these narratives, documentaries contribute to cultural preservation, fostering pride and appreciation of diverse traditions, and preventing the loss of valuable knowledge. Film has the power to ignite change and make a significant impact on the world.
Well, our guest today named her film company L'Orage. That's French for tempest, thunderstorm. And we'll see what storms she's whipping up with her films. As a filmmaker and auteur, you could say Tyler Chase's whole journey is a work of art. Starting as a theater actress and writer, working in small productions in New York City, when a health challenge came up, she reinvented herself. And given the many mediums of art, why not take that same desire to tell meaningful stories to film? To continue to explore, research, and tell those stories you are passionate about. She went to NYU's film school, and in her determination to just get it done, she has taken on various roles herself, from director, producer, writer, fundraiser, cinematographer. And if her film school education didn't cover it, she taught herself. For example, getting her FAA certified Part 107 commercial drone license. And she will show us how illuminating it can be to get the bird's eye view. There is a common theme running through Tyler's projects, and that is displacement. Whether it's a flock of geese, her artist neighbors in Brooklyn, or the First Nations here in the Americas, she questions the premises and the underlying values, the mindset, the after effects, and the loss for us all when individuals or an entire continent's first inhabitants are pushed aside. Her feature-length documentary films include Sweet Soul in Exile and A Castle in Brooklyn, King Arthur. Both were shown in film festivals around the world. They earned dozens of awards, and they earned her a seat at a United Nations Periodic Review of Human Rights to share footage of her film. She's here to share her story, culminating in a project of much interest to us that she's currently at work on, the working title, Always Here. She says, quote, "My film is about the ongoing cultural erasure of Native Americans through the destruction and the colonial interpretation of the Americas, original historical and sacred sites. Histories, she points out, are important. Histories are legacies as much as the artifacts they leave behind. Welcome, Tyler. So good to have you here. Congratulations on all your success. Not easy, especially as an independent filmmaker and as a woman. So, what jump-started you on this journey? And can you further define that quest that you are on in life, in film, and in art?
I think the medium is not as important as the passion. I
Mm.
think that because I started as a painter very, very young and went on to doing theater. And, you know, when I had to change my medium, I went to film. And it's just a need that we have as artists, I think. It's a passion, it's a need. It's something you really can't stop doing. And perhaps it's a kind of insanity, but it's a useful insanity. And what I try to do is for in the first film we did, A Castle in Britain, King Arthur, it's not that I chose it, it chose me. It was something that I felt so strongly about that even without money and without any resources, I just began this film about, you know, Arthur Wood and what happened to him with the Broken Angel building in Brooklyn. And I spent 8 years on that, just because you have to be there while it's happening. A lot of filmmakers get the funding, tell things in retrospect. I like to be there during the actual stuff because then there's no lying. So it's very investigative what I do. I start out thinking one way and end up somewhere else. And it just depends on what's really happening. So it's really based on the truth. And of course, truth you could say is very individual, but I don't think so. I think there's like a basic truth to a lot of things. And a lot of people don't like when I do the kind of investigations I do. They call it controversial. The truth today is controversial, I suppose. But if we all just forgive ourselves and go forward, I think there's room for everybody, even those who do wrong. Because, for instance, with the Castle from King Arthur, you know, there's certain people that, listen, people they have desires in life, they want to get to where they're going. And who am I to judge people? You know, and then maybe in retrospect, they can at some point apologize.
Yeah.
I think Arthur would have appreciated to be apologized to because he didn't make a penny for his house or his land that he owned outright.
When he was displaced. You know, it takes a brave scientist, it takes a brave person, filmmaker, to follow where the evidence leads. So I appreciate when that happens.
Yeah.
Right. I appreciate that you don't know where you're going when you start out. You just have a mission in mind, and you let it take you. You let the circumstances lead you.
And sometimes it's these untold stories that are so significant to human change, having us have put a mirror up to ourselves.
A mirror. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
you're there in Brooklyn. Arthur, who you're speaking of, was a cultural institution almost. You said he was creating a building out of an artwork out of a building. And do you
yes,
want to briefly tell us what happened? And
I could show you the short trailer. It kind of tells the gist
perfect.
of it. And
Sure.
I have to say that I get a lot of pleasure just from the fact that Arthur liked it. And the first thing I did when I finished the film was show it to Arthur. Had he not liked it, I would have trashed it.
Mm.
And that's part of what I do. I like to work with my subject. I am not here to exploit people.
Right.
There is a kind of filmmaking I call exploitation. And I don't want to, my film has been kind of compared to the one about the two women in Long Island. I can't remember that. Grey Gardens. You know,
yeah.
I could have done, someone said you could have done a Grey Gardens. Well, yeah, it was a little exploitive, right?
I saw that.
I mean, there wasn't much sympathy or understanding of those people.
Of their plight. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was
Voyeurism.
trying to get them yeah. So what I did, and you'll see from the trailer, I took it from Arthur's point of view. No matter what, He's eccentric. Some people don't like him. They don't like that he dared to make a building by himself. There's a lot of things but Arthur is an amazing artist. And he has a right as a human being to express himself.
Yeah.
And I will always fight for the rights of human beings and animals. How about all living things? Okay, we all have a right to express ourselves.
Yeah.
And to exist.
Right.
And to exist. And it was his very existence. And it was, and his wife too, because she would not have participated as she did in some very unusual reenactment in the film, which was their choice to do. So now y'all have to see the film because we're getting distribution soon.
Yeah.
After a lot of struggles, we had a lot of struggles.
Yeah.
Some of the insurance companies did not want to insure my film, even though it was vetted by a reputable lawyer. It took a long time. They had to, vetting a film is a long process, and you have to have all your documents correct. Even then, the broker was quite surprised and said, some insurance companies don't want to vet you. I said, why? They said it's controversial. There's no sex, there's no violence, there's truth. So there you have it.
Controversial truth.
Well, your film company is well named. Yeah.
So
Storm.
now we're getting the insurance and we're going to get it out there and distribute it. Hell or high water is coming at you. So that's just what I do, and I'm not going to stop because Arthur's story deserves to be told, and it's really something that's happening today, which is preemptive forced eviction.
Displacement. There you go. Displacements, rather than what we did to a whole continent.
Like when you get evicted for a reason. The reason for his eviction, which started with Katrina, the new trick in the book was if they say that you're in danger, they take you out of your home and you go with nothing and you can't get back in. Now they've used it on a whole, in this city alone, we're always running into people who've been preemptively forced evicted. Like within 5 hours, they have to leave. So in the case of Arthur Wood, they said his building was dangerous because there was a mysterious fire on the top of the 108-foot building, which did not go through. So now you all have to see the film because it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And they don't have to prove the danger; they just declare it a danger. But let's see.
No, in fact, he had engineers. He had engineers to say the contrary to what they were saying. You're dealing with FEMA. It gets to that point. So it's really, and in the background, you have developers, and in the background, and then he didn't get a penny. And that's why Brian Cox decided to do the narration, because he's a very good man, and he felt bad for Arthur and for the rights of individuals. He really does believe in the rights of individuals, Brian Cox, and I was very excited that he did the narration for us.
I mean, there's a thread to your work in that way, that you're really looking at that displacement, whether we're talking about the Native American history, going all the way back into indigenous cultures, and then the modern day equivalent of what's happening. So I think that there's a power to using film for change, and using it, like you said, not being motivated by a need for the stories to be told, that you're not attached to being a filmmaker. You'd be a painter, you'd be doing it, whatever it takes to tell the stories, whatever medium would work best. And so in this case, film has served you, and hopefully served us, as a means to better understand some of the challenges and the ways that things have gone in the story of humanity.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll show the trailer because it's very short. It's 2 minutes. Sure. Any objections out there? You can say it.
We're okay with controversy.
Yeah.
Okay, so here it is. I did this myself. I'm just going to share the screen now. Get ready.
Sure.
Once upon a time, a young artist, Arthur Wood, and his wife Cynthia bought an old building on auction. Arthur had a vision to reconstruct the derelict house into something magnificent. Behind Arthur Wood is his creation, the broken angel. For some, it was a beacon of hope, a monument to the imagination in a neighborhood ravaged by drugs and crime. But to Arthur, it was to be his life's legacy.
Arthur was here when this place was ridden with drugs. We went through Armageddon here.
Arthur is like our king. He's the king of the neighborhood, king of the artists.
Before everybody knew about Brooklyn, it was an attraction in Brooklyn.
Journalists appeared from every part of the world, and the Broken Angel was a celebrated attraction in Brooklyn.
Why did you want to build something this high?
Well, I don't consider it high. I like the view up here. People give up when they're 30 and they're not buried until they're 60 or 80. Okay? They might as well be dead. My drawing of the Empire State Building for Wedgwood, China, each one of these was reproduced 3,000 times. And I did it for 5 years.
After living in peace for 28 years, Arthur and Cynthia's lives are changed forever.
I like Arthur Wood's bravery, don't you? Arthur-lia! Arthur-lia!
So where can people see this?
Well, she just.
Well, they will soon be seeing it. We're getting distribution because, like I said, we are buying the insurance, which they doubled the price for us. Well, they didn't double it; they just added another 1,000 to one insurance company. But it will happen. So
Yeah.
we're planning to get a art house to screen it first, and it's going to go out there. So I will.
And
let
streaming
everyone
as
know.
well, no matter where you are around the world.
It will stream as soon as
All
we
right.
get our insurance, and that's
Yep.
it. It's
Good.
coming. It's coming no matter
Very
what.
interesting. Yeah,
Congrats for getting it up and out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, so even a flock of geese. I mean, you said let's view all of life as sacred. You've even told the story of geese being exterminated, just because they're kind of annoying. I know.
They're not, these are beautiful creatures, and to Canadians, especially the Canada geese, I take it very personally that they're being exterminated, and they're
Yeah.
trying to pretend they're not part of the natural landscape, or they're an invasive species in the United States.
Yeah.
Total. But anyway, so it was a strange matter that happened with the Bloomberg regime here in New York, and they blamed it on the strike with the plane. But of course, I
They're
have
a danger.
Yes. Well, I've disproven that because in Israel, Dr. Yossi Leshem has developed a method where he has studied the flight paths of the migratory birds. And boy, they have a lot of them in Israel. For a small country, it has a huge air force. They don't exterminate their birds. They have a method where they just don't go in their flight paths, and they have a special radar.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Yossi Leshem told me in an interview that the FAA here decided they don't use that radar. And so they're just killing the geese. And there's a cottage industry now that goes on. Now, believe it or not, that documentary is a very risky one. One of our people who actually filmed them rounding up the geese, which is a horrible thing to see. I know some of you don't like geese, but if you see this, you have to identify with it because it's just terrifying. The poor geese are molting and they're protecting their babies, and they will protect their babies. And they put them in crates, and they leave them there in the crates, one crate over the other, pooping on each other, and they leave them in the hot sun. And then they gas them And it takes them 30 minutes to die because they can hold their breath. And not only that, they pretend they're giving it to the homeless. So that was the next. And I disproved that too, because I spoke with someone from the United Nations that I had met there who deals with the homeless. He said, I never saw any geese food for the homeless shelters. So he said, that's just something they're saying. And I agree with him. So the reason we haven't come up with that, because one of our main researchers was arrested and he lost his home, lost it. So there's a lot of controversy. When we get a little stronger, we're going to, you know, we're holding it there. We're going to finish this one and the Blues of 475 until we find Greg, who's disappeared.
Thank
so
you.
Telling the truth and revealing stuff can be a dangerous matter.
How did you get on the story of the displacement and the attitudes for destroying much of the history, denying the history of the first peoples here? We've been following the story of the multiple migrations for decades. We were doing this on radio. We were talking with many of the key researchers finding very early sites in the Americas. And our question was always, what's so special about the Americas that they couldn't get here? Early people, they got everywhere else in the world. Why not here during the Ice Age? And we looked at the land bridge controversy. Recently interviewed Yuri Klochila, saying the land bridge was habitable by mammoths and mastodons at various intervals during this long Ice Age. People followed the migrations. This was a two-way street. We've talked with people about the Polynesians coming over. If they could find Hawaii, why would they not be able to bump into a whole continent, right? With their long distance sailing and charting by the stars. We've been talking with a lot of people finding the evidence, even for, How did you happen on this story? And where are you with that story?
Well, I've never really believed in everyone coming in through the Bering Strait. There's a lot of logistics. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, or, you know, if you really look at it. I believe there was migration, but I think it was probably two ways. As Paulette Steeves has stated, she's a Cree Métis archaeologist. And not only her, but the discoveries of the footprints just recently, 23,000-year-old footprints. We have this Gabiski site, which is 10,000 years old. That's way before Egypt, which is in Massachusetts. There were sections of Americas that were not covered by glacier. There were tropics here. There was a camel, breed of camel here that went to the other side. So there was a lot of, so I believe from what I'm understanding and my feeling about it, gut feeling and speaking to many archaeologists, there was a desire, a colonial way of explaining the Native American cultures, because when you're exterminating people, it really bothers you if they have a history. It's better to put them with the fauna and the dinosaurs. You don't want to know about it. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what persists in archaeology today. And some people, like Curtis Hoffman, Dr. Hoffman, calls it the Clovis police. Despite everything, they're going to continue to say it's only 10,000 years old. They're going to stick to that 10,000, even if they do carbon dating. And that's a problem. And I understand people have their theses, they have their reputations built on things, and then it's kind of blown away and it bothers them. That's one reason, or there could be a religious reason. I was told that there's people who, for instance, at the Hiscox site, which I'm going to show you. Yeah, let me just show you this right now. Now, the Hiscox site, which is a site Buffalo Museum of Science led a dig years ago, and they discovered a mastodon site. And then they discovered that the mastodons had been slaughtered. And some of the bones dated back to like 14,000 years. And then they found human bones and dog bones and a sled made from split Mastodon tusk. That was kept quiet. Now, let me
Mhm.
just share the screen a bit with you, and then we'll talk about this. You know, archaeology is people or scientists. They try their best. They are scholars. They're individuals, they're human beings. They have to get a job. They have to work for people. And at times, everyone can be compromised. Now, a lot of you won't like what I'm saying, but I have interviewed a lot of archaeologists, and and probably, oh, hi, Sam. So I'm sure Sam will back me up on this. I was quite shocked when I understood a lot of what's going on in the science of archaeology. So here, I'm going to show you some of the Hiscox site.
While you pull that up, I would just want to say that archaeology and the archaeologists have made some great strides in the recent decades, embracing the Native American point of view, embracing the dates, being willing to rethink the story and the premise. But you're saying that there's this lingering colonial attitude. It definitely was more limited and restricted in decades gone by, but it's lingering is what you're pointing out still.
Well, really, you know, just when I was a young girl, you couldn't say you were of Native American descent. The Native Americans have been treated terribly throughout history.
Agreed. I just want to
such
point out
little
that there are
part-
archaeologists who are helping to change the story.
Oh, yes, of course.
I want to
And
acknowledge those archaeologists who are.
absolutely, and I'm going to name some because I spoke to them, and I'm of course, is Paulette, and there's many people,
Yes.
including Dr. Gramley. There's many of them, but there are persistent. They are sometimes persecuted. They are sometimes, you know, people who tell the truth, or sometimes or new things. At first, when you're doing something new, you're thought of as crazy, and then all of a sudden, everybody gets the idea and says, "Oh, that's always existed," and that happens with everything. Okay, I'm not. There's some very, very amazing people out there I've interviewed.
Whatever
Obviously.
the field, whenever a new theory shows its first line of evidence, there's resistance until look at,
Overwhelming.
until the evidence is so overwhelming that it's a foregone conclusion, right? Even plate tectonics is a great example of that. Happens in many fields. So,
Yeah.
No, I don't know if you know about what is the doctrine of discovery. I, in my film, want to show that the doctrine of discovery has affected the very core of our thought processes. And that's why people consider the indigenous people not even as people. Because in the doctrine of discovery, which was created in the 1400s, it was how the people who came here were able to claim the lands, kill the people, and you know, if they didn't believe in their god or whatever,
push them
they're a
aside.
different color. It was used for Black people. It was used for anybody of a different race, and this has persisted. And I do believe, from my, you know, I've been doing this for a while, and really, actually, has been something like, I wouldn't say that expression in public, the hair up there. You know what? It's been a bothersome thing to me since I'm a child, because I've always hated the way they treat Native American history. You know, in my country, in Canada, with the hydro dams, they don't care. There was a Micmac site years ago, and they simply flooded it, and there was petroglyphs there, and they just didn't bother. Doesn't care. And let me just point out also that they'll put in the Natural Museum, the Museum of Natural History was where the history of Native Americans was. Why wasn't it in the Metropolitan Museum?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
And I pine for all of the artifacts and the sites that were lost due to ignorance. All the,
Or political
when you,
reasons.
if you could dial back and see this country before we arrived, it was replete with people, artifacts, monuments.
Many nations, many different cultures, and you know, it was. So let me tell you first something exciting.
Yes.
Okay.
We're in Lower Blue Licks, Kentucky, with Dr. Gramley and Sam Briggs. So this lady she's a retired employee of the Buffalo Museum of Science. Sam Briggs has been trying to have the return of the human remains from the Hiscox site for quite a few years now. And they have been refused to him, even though you have laws to the contrary. You're supposed to return dead people, or the deceased remains. So this lady testified on film that she saw human remains at the Hiscox site. They were not dated. They were put in alcohol for 2 or 3 weeks, and they were, as she said, beautified, which is a kind of formula they put on the bones. So there's been many archaeologists who've tried to examine the dog bones so that they would know the date of the human bones. They have been refused access. There is an archaeologist who was head of that dig, and he is supposedly, and I am just quoting what has been told to me, a creationist, and nothing can exist past 10,000 years. I'm not making this up. I'm just repeating what was said by people in the film. And they're archaeologists, other archaeologists. Now, here we have Dr. Gramley and Leon Sam Briggs at the site itself. I went with them to see this site that is now all overgrown, so that it could explain to me and show me where the mastodon bones were. So that's how it started. They found mastodon bones. And then after a few years of digging, they came upon human bones, and in fact, there was a child, a human, and a dog. It was like a grave. I'm sure Dr. Gramley or Sam could explain this better than me. And they, so of course everybody was interested in that, but the human bones are still gone. They're not, Sam has not been able to retrieve them, and it's an ongoing battle to even see them. And here, this is kind of fascinating. This is the salt spring where these artifacts were found. Now, according to Dr. Gramley, the salt springs happens in Blue Licks too, in Kentucky, that they find these sleds. It was kind of a ritual place where Native Americans thousands and thousands of years ago would bring people to be buried, or shaman, or sacred people. They were these remains of tusks, mastodon tusks, split in half, that were sled runners. And then you find human remains or indications, also that a mastodon had been slaughtered. You see that there, so that there was a human occupation. And so this is what it looks like. I just wanted to show off my drone skills. So that kind of looks like an eye. Yeah,
because it looks like a mammoth on its side, doesn't it? You see the long trunk, you can see the legs, the eye, even the ears. I mean, it's extraordinary. I know that James Harrod and Mike Gramley talked about the site extensively, and why it would be so meaningful to those people who celebrated and depended so long ago on the mammoth and mastodons.
Exactly. Now I'm going to
this is Mother Earth herself declaring this is a site honoring these proboscideans.
This is in Kentucky. This is the lower Blue Lick site, and this is a mastodon bone, and that has had the work of a human being or a hatchet. Wow. You can see the axe marks on it.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. This is a split mastodon tusk. You can see on one side of it that has been worked, carved. There was a couple of them like that. You can see at the bottom that there are 2 holes. And this was a sled runner, and there's ochre on it. So this is curator Jennifer Spence, and she was kind enough to let us film this. She had to take it out. It had been in storage for years and years, not properly recognized. And there's so many artifacts in museums that are not properly categorized or they don't even know
Labeled.
what they are because they're taken out of situ too. They're also taken out of situ. So when you
Right.
take something out of situ, it's hard to recognize it. And I really respect archaeologists who actually go, and there are actually a lot of them who are re-identifying and recategorizing and also bringing in the Native Americans to help.
To
Act
help
like they don't know.
interpret.
Exactly, because they don't know sometimes the interpretation of things.
Mhm. Look at the notch on the wider end of that. Oh my gosh, that is intentionally worked purposefully, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It is really beautiful.
And it was so important that you were there with your cameras to document all this, to get the interviews live with all these folks behind the scenes.
It was a great honor for me to be in the presence of this, to understand that human beings on this continent had been there, had done this. It's quite fascinating, and of course, this,
Mhm.
you know,
How do you
and
interpret that bone end? Why do we see that notch
The
and those
hatchet.
striations? Yeah.
I can't remember what Dr. Gramley told me. It's on the film, but you'd have to ask him. I think it was part of the sled or something.
Mhm.
The front part, perhaps. I don't remember.
These are tools, right? These are
Yeah,
these
these
It's
are
been,
are
it's been tooled. It's been worked. It's the
Yeah.
point is.
been
Yeah.
worked. Yeah, they've been worked.
we
And what
just
else
don't
do
give
we
our
have?
ancestors enough credit for how clever they were working with the materials that they
It's
had,
still, yeah.
right? It's just genius.
Mhm.
So I'm
What's
bringing your
this?
attention. Okay, I'm bringing your attention to the youth of the Sioux Nation, and they're in Barre, Massachusetts here singing at their reclamation ceremony. Why are they here singing? Because they were reclaiming items that had been taken from the bodies of those massacred at Wounded Knee.
Mhm.
The items were in a library, a little library museum, and they were in curio cabinets, including a scalp. And you had stuffed birds and all kinds of things on a human scalp, and this is the kind of disgraceful stuff that we are still doing. It's unbelievable to me. I'm sorry.
To call them
I think it's so
curios when these are
disrespectful.
human remains and these are their ancestors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Cedric Broken Nose. He is a direct descendant of Chief Black Elk, which you can see if you see the very famous photograph of Wounded Knee, the man who's lying down with the rag around his head. The reason there's a rag around his head is because white people had scalped him. And his scalp was at this museum, and it took them 130 years to return it. But not only that, these people came all the way from the Dakotas to that ceremony, and they were so kind, and they gave beautiful blankets to the people of the library after receiving their things. The attitude of these people, to me, is amazing. And their survival skills. They're here, they're still here, they're always here. Indigenous people are here. They may
Always
be
here. That's the name of your film.
Exactly. They are here. And this is Leon Sam Briggs at the Buttonhook Forest. Another aspect of our film is about ceremonial stone landscapes, which are stones that were used for ceremony thousands and thousands of years ago. And it's a thing to recognize it and recognize them. Most states recognize ceremonial stone landscapes. I believe there's only 4 states in the Union that do not recognize them or respect them. And that has to do with land. It's not profitable to recognize these areas. It's complicated. So this is Buttonhook Forest. This lady right here, Tracy Bilski, she's not a Native American, but she recognized that these stones were unusual. And she had Ramapo people there. She had Narragansett. She had Haudenosaunee, which is Sam. They were there to verify the importance of this landscape. Now, there's a school board that's selling the land, and they're totally disregarding the landscape. And a lot of these places are destroyed, utterly destroyed. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. This is a PSA I did for Buttonhook, because some of my activities include when I do see something's really desperate, I will pitch in and help with my skills. And so this is Alanis Abamsawan, probably saying it terribly wrong. She's an Abenaki from my country in Quebec. She says, when the last tree is cut, the last fish is caught, and the last river is polluted, when to breathe the air is sickening, you will realize too late that wealth is not in bank accounts and that you can't eat money.
More and more of these places are disappearing, and we're going to arrive at a point fairly soon if we don't do something where we have erased the ceremonial features from our landscape. That's not good for us spiritually, culturally, or historically. And I think the same way we preserve Euro-American history, we need to preserve Native American history if we want to connect ourselves together and have a whole culture that has roots.
What happened to the forest?
Well, I was trying to show what will happen to the Buttonhook forest. They'll be cutting down all the trees. They'll destroy the ceremonial stone site so that they can have McMansions built. And of course, real estate is a big problem in today's society. Displacement, homelessness, and greed. And greed is, in this case, destroying Native American history. There's a lot of places where white history is preserved, but not so much Native American history. And that's a shame. Now, let me tell you about the Skibisky site, if you don't mind. So I started the whole film because of the Skibisky site. I wanted to tell you guys how I started this project. Well, I came upon a petition, and the petition had talked about a 10,000-year-old site in Northampton, Massachusetts, and it was going to be destroyed for a roundabout. And this family, the Skibisky family, Greg and his father, 92-year-old man, John Skibisky, Polish people, but nice people, great people, right? Because they were really caring about the Native American artifacts that had been dug up there. They took the artifacts. What they do is they do these little test pits. They take some artifacts out. Okay, everything's gone. Go ahead and build. Not good enough, kids. That's not good enough. So in this case, You know, you
Not
have
left in the ground. Yeah.
no, it's no, you know, they're going to build something, and this is a problem. Whereas, and then they take it away when they do have the artifacts. They take it away, and if the tribes want the artifacts of their ancestors, they have to have a receptacle or a museum. Well, then they sometimes don't have such a structure,
Or
and
the
they won't
funds
see
to
their
build
stuff.
one.
Yeah, they won't be able to see their stuff. And how is that for their children? I can go and see in my cabinet over here stuff from my great grandmother. Do you know the Native Americans in Canada? The stuff was taken away from them by the priests. They would go and take any ceremonial thing you had and they burned it.
Right.
So,
made it illegal to use it. Yeah.
yes, and even your language, you weren't allowed to speak it. So I don't know what else we can do to the to people. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I get so. We're in 2023, and we're supposed to be leaders of the free world and telling everybody else how to run their business. And meantime, back at the ranch, you know, we're still doing this. This is still happening. Anyway.
Well, there's the power. There's the power of film. I mean, there's the power of what you're doing by documenting it, by making it available, by bringing the education out there to the general public in a way that maybe is not even aware of how much the suppression has existed. So that's a role that you play, and that's an important role of film itself. And that film can be, like we titled today's discussion, "Film Can Change the World." It can participate in a global change, and that's a wonderful mission and something that needs to happen.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to show you some things about the Skibisky site, if you guys don't mind. I have some photographs. Sure. And to show you now, a conclusion here. What happened was there was a archaeologist working for the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Massachusetts Historical Commission has a very bad record with Native American sites. There's a certain person at the head of that place. I'm not going to mention the name. But that person is very famous for letting those places be destroyed or denying their existence or denying their importance. Mm-hmm. And so they're destroyed constantly. And so the Skibisky site, they wanted to do a roundabout on this ancient site, and the Skibiskys have some money and they decided to fight. And they had Mark Andrews, Tipo for Wampanoag there, John Brown of the Narragansett. A lot of people were like, leave it alone. Like, you know, stop this. And they actually won for a while, but they're back again. And they're saying, oh no, it's a different story. It's a different project. So they're very persistent about trying to destroy something. And they also said, it wasn't a village. They weren't here permanently. They were following the herds. You know, that old thing, like, Native Americans didn't have homes in the Northeast. I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Logically, you're in a cold place. You better have a place to live. Does anybody actually believe that people did little teepees and ran after herds all the time, especially in the Connecticut Valley, where there was abundant water, where there was, you know, that doesn't make sense. So on top of them saying, first the archaeologist said it's a very important historical site, more than 10,000 years old. You notice he didn't say more than anything else. 10,000.
Right. More than
10,000-year-old. That was his official site, official declaration in the newspapers and everything. Very well covered. You can look it up. Then this person gets involved, and you know, all of a sudden, it's not that important. We dug everything up of importance, and it was a traveling bunch of people for thousands of years that kept going back there. So now you can build. Okay, so that was their excuse. So we're going to go after it anyway. So this is, let me just show you there. So this is the infamous place where they want to put a roundabout. Some people said you simply need lights, a light. I'm a driver. I drive a lot. You know, I drive my little 2004 Prius, stack the back with all my equipment, and I run around. I've been to Kentucky. I'm going up to Sault Ste. Marie. I drive a lot. I can tell you a roundabout is a scary thing for me. And if you get somebody in front of you who has a fear of going into the roundabout, it can be there's no reason for a roundabout. I dread them, but they're insisting that nothing else will work roundabouts. So this is where they want to put the roundabout. You would be inconveniencing Mark's Motors. You can see the sign at the bottom because that gentleman has a business there. And well, I was there quite often at that area, and people, there hasn't been any crashes really. But let me just tell you why it's so interesting to Massachusetts or this area, because they get a grant or something from the government for green, whatever it's called, the Green Deal. So they're getting a great amount of money to put these aspects in, supposedly. And so there's money involved. And that's, of course, one of the reasons they want to destroy. This is
it wasn't even that busy of an intersection, though. I mean, why not put it where there's actual a lot of traffic? But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but you can do lights here.
Yeah,
You can do lights, or you can square off that little triangle, the bottom there, and do, there's something that can be done. You don't need really a roundabout that impinges, goes right into the forest on your left.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been engineers. It's not coming from me. This has been. Now here I am, my first visit, looking very serious, and with my assistant Anastasia. And in the background we have John Skibisky, and here is Mark Andrews, Tribal Historical Preservation Officer, and who has been an amazing help with this film. I just wanted to give a shout out to my elders and allies in this film, because without them, without knowing where to go and who to film and how to film and the access I've had, this would be impossible. And Mark, Cora, Pierce, Pakasset Wampanoag, who works with the Narragansett, Deputy Tippo, you have John Brown, Narragansett, we have Leon Sam Briggs, Haudenosaunee. I hope I didn't forget anybody. So these people have really been open in their hearts and helped me a lot. And I've also been in touch with the Pakasset tribe just lately, and Ramapo, okay, Michaeline, and Chief Man. So just wanted to give a shout out to them, because without their help, we wouldn't be able to do this film. Now, here's a little bump in the road for those who pretend that it's a temporary site that they kind of like, went to every summer. And that's why there's thousands of artifacts right under the ground, just messy people, I guess. But this is a few thousand yards away, and it's a grinding stone. The man kneeling is the geologist, Nick Venti. Now, why did I bring a geologist? Well, because it's good to have a scientist on the other side to look at the rock. He was astounded. First of all, because it's on the top of a hill and it's a big quartz rock. And then, of course, you'll see the top of it. On the right, you have, I think it's your stage left, or whatever. On your right is Mark. I just introduced you to him before. Here's a stone. That's a grinding stone. Thousands of years old.
And what were they grinding? Like native seeds, or just wild seeds? Or
I was told by a medicine man that most likely they were herbs and healing things. Because
okay.
And I'll show you something else. Now, see the stone that's kind of in the side of it? That's actually the motor, or the pestle. What do you call it? The thing that you're grinding.
Yeah, right. The handheld piece that you're.
It had carvings on it. It's absolute. Now here, watch this. What's that?
Oh, okay.
Like a bird?
Wow.
A lot of these stones, when you turn them certain ways, look like, and it's been pecked, by the way, and that was, carved. The geologist confirmed this has been worked. So that's quite fascinating to me.
It almost looks like a cupule also, where they're grinding out part of the stone as dust for ceremonies and various.
Exactly. There were parts that were taken out perhaps for flints, but if you put a compass right on that ledge, that straight edge that Nick Venti did, it pointed perfect north, magnetic north.
Okay.
Oh.
Mhm.
That was strange. So here it is, kind of a bump in the road for the theory that, you know, this was a site that people kind of visited occasionally.
Yeah.
You know, not very important.
No, they're gathering botanicals, they're grinding them, they're conducting ceremony, they're,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's that. And then there's also a place called Snapit. You're going to cry when you see this. The other threat to stone sites and to burial sites and anything historical is industrial solar panels.
Oh.
Can I show you that?
Oh, please do.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
waiting.
You take us wherever you want to go.
Boy. Oh boy, you guys, here I am. I feel like Debbie Downer. Oh boy. All right. You
You're
asked.
issuing a call to action, and I know many people will want to know what can they do in their own locale to help
Mhm.
preserve what's there.
Right.
So what is this? This is from 1964. It's about Snapit Pond, or a place we call Snapit. Some of the artifacts they found, some of the things.
Can you hit the play button so we get full screen?
Oh yes, okay. There we go, sorry. So they were already digging bogs there for cranberries and destroyed, you see, had been destroyed unknowingly by the removal of sand for bogs. Okay. This is more about that site. Look at the sand removal on the bottom right.
Oh boy.
Now they know it's a 10,000 plus site, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
There it is.
my goodness.
Okay, so now they're going to put up solar panels. Okay.
They already have. They've covered it.
There you have it. And a sand pit. Wait. You see the look on my face?
Mhm.
I was in shock. I was in shock. Rebecca, I think Miss Lipton showed me this place. Wonderful person. And told me about it. And she was very upset. There's a group fighting for the Pine Barrens up in Massachusetts right now. And for the Native American sites, because the Pine Barrens, hundreds of thousands of acres are being chopped down of rare pine barrens. This is ridiculous.
You were able to uncover historical evidence for what this site held. And aren't there laws that before you start to put in some kind of a civic project, you've got to do your geo, your archaeology, your ground, You've got a lot of studies to do. You were able to bring up evidence that they couldn't find in an official study that was required by law?
Well, here's the question. You're absolutely right. Here it is, 1964. There was a study, but in their estimation, when they do their little digs with their little potholes, they take out all the stuff, spirit away, and there's nothing left. P.S. You know, they don't think where they put the highway that across the street was also part of a site. Oh, there was only about 10 Native Americans living there. I mean, there is no logic.
Well, how did they put roads so close to Stonehenge, right? I mean, there it is in your face, and they still put roads very close to it. So you wonder, what are the values? What is our mindset? What is our worldview? What are we valuing here? What is the story we're telling ourselves? I mean, this is indicative of a much larger issue.
This is Cora Pierce. She is a Pecasset Wampanoag, and she is a close friend of mine, grown to be a close friend, lovely woman. And I was very honored that she brought me to these spots.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't tell the exact location, and I will not, ever, unless I am told I can, because there are vandals. And the very day I went to this is called King Philip's Cave. And you see how it's hewn out of this boulder? There's a cave there. It was actually, you see the straight edge on the right?
And I see the stacked wall filling in the gap.
Yes, and if you look inside, there's like the way it's hewn, it's not very natural. And this is supposedly where King Philip, you know, the of the King Philip's War. He supposedly was there, and this whole area is very, very important to the tribes. I was very disturbed to go there because it had been vandalized when she was showing it to me, and she was very disturbed and hurt, and so was I.
Yeah.
Because
This is all of our heritage. If we had the mindset that we are really truly one people in our diversity, but it's one spaceship Earth that we share, we're all one family, animate, inanimate, four-legged, two-legged, every species. When we come to that, we'll understand that what we do to one is what we do to everyone, right?
Well, that would be getting rid of the doctrine of discovery in a very deep sense, wouldn't it, Lorelei?
Yeah.
You know, we like to cling to things because it makes us feel more powerful than others. And that's false power. That's not power. That's just stupid. Anyway, so this is Cora, and she brought me to this cave, and she was excited because they had won this cave from the Rocky Woods site, which was a very, very, in fact, it's in town records from the 1600s. It's old. They talked about it way back then. I'm going to get to the next slide, so hold your breath. Now, it was a ceremonial stone site, a sacred place where the tribes gathered for thousands of years, okay? So this is what they did to it.
Okay, I'm in shock.
There are now dead box turtles. We found turtle shells. I mean, it kills everything. And you see the top, there's like a little woods there.
Yeah.
Okay, so right after that is the cave. And right after the cave is a highway. And she has to have permission to do ceremony at the cave. And the same with the Pocasset. We were just there, Lizette and I, visiting the Pocasset, Watapet reservation, and their ancestors had fought in the Revolutionary War. They were heroes. And those people they don't even have land. They took their land, they moved the graves for a water project. And they can't do ceremony. They can't go up and do ceremony. Where's the religious freedom? Okay, so something more pleasant. This is, what does that look like to you guys?
It could
Because
be.
I think it looks like a woman with boobs. I'm sorry. This is a sandstone quarry. Now, sandstone was before pottery. And this is in a place in, it was actually discovered by a wonderful park ranger who was very interested in the past. And when I say lovely people, they really are, and they really preserve these places, and they're very kind people. And I saw Dr. Fader, Ken Fader, and he's the one who dug this and said it was a quarry. This is the cave or overhang that Yale University years before declared as the quarry. Why? Because they found lots of things, lots of pottery. Here, I'm going to show off my drone footage again. This is through the woods, guys, with a drone. There you go. Yeah. So this has been totally excavated. And Yale has all those artifacts. And have they tried to connect with the proper people? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, will I get to see them? Will anybody get to see them? They're in articles, archaeological articles, but the people need to be educated. We need to see them. We need to know what existed, in my view. So that's just an example of stuff I'm doing. I'm going to stop my share now. Now you're going to.
That was some pretty daredevil drone flying through the trees. Wow. So.
I was a skydiver, so.
Okay.
Oh.
So many small sites that aren't making the news. So many stories that the rest of us just aren't privy to. So I'm sure you could do this in every state. I'm sure you could do this throughout Canada.
Okay. Oh, in
Yeah.
Connecticut, we found Connecticut. We were in Massachusetts. We're in Kentucky, and we were in Rhode Island. You know, and even in Jamestown. My friend Cora told me about the Jamestown people. There is a book about it. She got me the book, the original book, which is amazing. It's a very old book. I don't know where I put it. It's around here somewhere.
Well, you look at that. Let's take some comments and
Yeah, so
questions.
we can open it up. You know how to raise your hand in the Zoom screen. Just click on the reactions button so I can see who has questions and who would like to participate. James Harrod is sitting here. So James, can I get you to make comment at this point on some of
And I have to
your
read Kelly's
observations?
comment while you get James on. Kelly's saying she's the coolest woman ever. How blessed we are as an institute to be put in her path. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And James is the one that kicked off this whole quest here.
Hi, James.
Hi, James.
How are you?
I'm good. This is a really wonderful presentation, and I'm happy to meet you, Chase.
Thank you.
Um,
Happy to meet you too. I've heard so much about you through Dr. Gramley and other people that I met down in Kentucky.
The first thing is back at the Zabriskie site, which I think is the one with that, I might have it wrong now, the grinding stone. You had 2 or 3 photos of the grinding stone.
Yes.
You did a great photo, which is very rare in archaeological history of reports of archaeologists. You'd shot the angle of the stone.
Yes.
And that is a mammoth sculpture, I swear, after looking at thousands and thousands of images. That is a beautiful mammoth sculpture. And so the grinding stone is on the back of the mammoth. And because mammoth is one of the most sacred animals of the people who arrived from Siberia 15, 20,000, 100,000 years ago. So mammoth is a creator being in almost all the tribes of Siberia. So one would expect to see lots of mammoth or mastodon art. And so that's what I've been working on with Dr. Gramley. So we are breaking the paradigm, which is one of the worst colonial paradigms and as absolutely stupid as possible, which is that we have to assume after 100 years of North American archaeology that the people who came from Siberia, who when they lived in Siberia made portable art sculptures, had tons of rituals of all sorts, that when they got to North America, they completely forgot their entire culture.
Right.
So the history of US archaeology is looking at the tools.
Not the art, not the ritual.
So to break through this ignorance that's hundreds of years old of colonial ignorance and intentional, as you said, that doctrine of discovery, to break through that is so difficult. Now, I've posted articles on the Hiscock site where because it's very controversial to talk about portable art stones, because collectors have collected billions of these with no
Figure
dates.
stones. Yeah.
So, and only mentioned secondarily the few stones that were flaked into zoomorphs. So just at Hiscock, there are dozens of antler and bone and sculptures of zoomorphs that I could identify to the species, and by the context of the Siberian and East Asian mythologies and the native indigenous peoples' mythologies, reconstruct the spiritual vision of these people. Now, this has been posted on academia.edu for several years now. There's not been one North American anthropology or archaeology paper in academia citing these finds. So the level of intentional denial of what I present as a hypothesis and is to me extraordinary. So anyway, I just wanted to mostly just mention that you have that great sculpture of a mammoth. So all you need to know is when was the last mammoth in Massachusetts, and you'll have the minimum date of that stone. And the fact that elders
By
said it was
logic.
herbal healing stone tells you, yes, it's part of, they had the mythology of the mammoth as a creator being, and they're doing ritual on it. And so I just want to mention that.
You got to add James to your interview list there. Make a trip to Maine.
Yeah.
And the second
Yeah.
thing I just want
I'm
to
going to
say,
be going up to Maine actually. What was it for? I can't remember. Was that? Do you remember what I had to go there for something? There was a site or something that I have to. Can't remember.
I think I didn't follow your
But
question.
James, I'm going to challenge you with something because that's just what I do. Okay, so how about this? Because I've, hanging out with my indigenous friends.
Yeah.
Okay, and from what my mother told me, Mary was quite something. My mother is the one who told me that, Vikings were here and they mixed with the Mi'kmaq people. I have an ancestor who is a Mi'kmaq. She's on my wall. Marianne Trudel, they called her, that was her white name. And supposedly, my mother told me, oh, you were mixed with the Vikings. Whatever, mom coming with these things. And then I find out, guess what? There were Vikings here.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
another thing that Mary told me, we didn't come from anywhere. We came from here. And she said they were going both sides, back and forth. At one time, there was one big thing. So not necessarily, she says, we probably were the original Egyptians. Well, that was Mary. I liked her. But that's a hypothesis of a lot of Native Americans. I'm tending to keep an open mind about that until I see more. But I know that we're all together. I do believe we're all together, and I thank you, James, for pointing out the Clovis police, that Dr. Hoffman, and what has happened to Dr. Gramley, which has not been funny.
And even the Clovis are older than the Clovis police think. We have the dates now, 6 dates. Dr. Gramley got on the sled from Lower Blue Licks, 6 dates. He published a short article on it, and they're like 16,000 years old. So, and then there are mammoth bones that are part of that sled, which are 20-some thousand years old. So, there's so much work to do at Lower Blue Licks. And so I wanted to just say, probably the most, for me personally, poignant image you showed was at the Pioneer Museum at Lower Blue Licks, where Gramley and the curator were showing the bone there. And then I saw written on the side, Pioneer Museum, because my name is James Harrod, and I'm a direct line descendant from the John Harrod, who was the brother of James Harrod, who founded Harrodsburg, Kentucky, which was the first permanent settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. And so to see, and my life is at this point, trying to unburden myself of that history. One of my ancestors was named Captain Tom, the Indian fighter or Indian killer. And they went into Ohio and they founded Cincinnati. And the other thing about Kentucky and Harrodsburg that you'd never read about, although I saw it in an old book on James Harrod, the cane lands of Kentucky were the Shawnee burial grounds. And that's how James Harrod and the other settlers got into Kentucky, because there weren't a lot of indigenous peoples living on the burial grounds, because they were living, the Shawnee were in Ohio. Right. And they would cross the river, which itself is a a ritual mythological thing about going across the river to the portal of the other world where the dead are our ancestors.
Right.
So it's the land of the ancestors and the burial ground. And that's how the first settlers got in there. Easy. So, and then of course they dug up and claimed all the burial grounds. And so my work now at the late age of life is to unburden myself by the discoveries I'm making and discovering, rediscovering the ancestral spiritual vision of all life, all the animal species, the humans, the non-humans, that these people have had extensive mythologies about, created portable art, created megalithic art, all of this, which is time this country learned about.
Well, you know, there's also, may I just point out, there's years ago, there was a discovery, or they were talking about a place in Ithaca, New York, and it was a huge discovery, huge thing. It was an irrigation ditch. They compared it to the Mayan construction.
Mayan construction.
Yes, and it was blown apart by General Sullivan, evidently. So he was known as the city destroyer. So there were cities here. There were structures. There were stone structures. There were things like that. But on purpose, a lot of them were destroyed. They were used for roads. They were ground down. They were used for other things. They were taken away. Now this place, and I have it in my cabinet because you can't find it on Google anymore. P.S. Try to find Anna Snapit on Google. Try to find the map to Anna Snapit. You can't anymore. In 2 years, you cannot find Anna Snapit. I have my coordinates because I'm a drone pilot, so I know where it is. But this is ridiculous. So I do have the records. I'll get it out. It's stuck in my mess over here about that because it's years ago that they had this discovery, and I was very excited about it. But it's under reform, and supposedly the Oneida still go there and do ceremony for that city, for that place. So this, anytime we make a discovery, the general public, it's in a newspaper perhaps like it was, and then it's not taught in schools. So people have the weird impression that these were just nomadic people kind of walking around with their teepees, you know, stopping over here, making hundreds of arrowheads. I don't know. It to me, I'm so egregiously pissed off by this ongoing lies, and they don't ask. You know, the Tippos I know, they're seldom asked, what is this? What is that? I asked Sam about something I found on a beach, and he said, that's a bolo. It's an ancient bolo to kill birds. I didn't know what it was.
Oh,
Nobody, I'll show it to you. Nobody knew what it was.
mm-hmm.
So nobody asked Native Americans, what is this? Like if you ask John Brown, he can actually tell you where things are going to be. He knows where there's burial because they know there's, you know, people.
There's a logic too.
Yeah.
But there's also oral tradition.
Yeah.
There's oral tradition. Why is that? You know, books are not as dependable sometimes as oral tradition because it depends who's writing the book.
Yeah.
Well, also everything we left behind was the book, if you could read it.
Yeah. And coming back to James, that idea of unburdening oneself, I do want to acknowledge you for the research and the work that you're doing, because any of us, and especially if they come from European culture, go back and start looking at that history, we're going to need to unburden something. We may not have the skills that you do at doing the homework and looking at the history, but it's there. And so maybe this healing can take place where we can transition to what we're talking about today. And that, first of all, the acknowledgement, just understanding that it's there, that it cannot be denied, you know, and we can try to ignore it. But I think more and more, like Laura mentioned earlier, the field of archaeology it's changing, it's shifting. It has to. There's no way it can stay stuck in the patterns of denial.
Because we're changing. Right?
Yeah.
Our worldviews are changing and expanding.
It's being pushed forward. And so, yeah, I think that's an important part of it.
Well, also, I think we have to look at ourselves and say, okay, we're broken people. Displacement happened to all of us
Right.
in our
That's
lineage.
True too. Yeah, that's true too.
And we're just now repeating the same error. It's like any traumatized person starts to revisit the trauma on everyone else around them, right? We need to heal ourselves.
The pattern of abuse continues. Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Well, James, thank you so much for contributing to this conversation. And I know, and also Leon, Sam Briggs is here as well.
Oh, let's have Leon.
Sam,
keep James on and put Leon.
Okay, let's add him in here.
Sam on.
Hello, well, that's Sam's ceiling. That's what his ceiling looks like, if you've been wondering. I don't know that he's even at the microphone right now. I just threw him on randomly.
Can I show you the bolo?
Yeah, please do that.
I was going to ask,
I'll come back to Sam in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So
It's
how does
highly worked?
2 holes.
Yeah.
Well, they put a piece of spread hide through here.
Yeah.
And could kill birds. That's what Sam told me. Now I didn't know what the hell it was.
That was just on a beach.
Yeah, I find a lot of things. They kind of find me. Look at this thing.
Yeah.
It's got finger marks in it. It's
yeah.
ochre.
Yeah. And that's the same beach?
Yeah. Right over here in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
In Brooklyn.
There's so many Native Americans. There's so much stuff on this land. We're walking on them.
Yeah.
We're walking on people's land. Anyway. This,
and how far down do those artifacts go? How many layers are we willing to dig down to look?
Right. And that's exactly,
acknowledge.
family will say that. Dig deeper. Dig deeper.
Literally.
Have to dig deeper. Well, now they have the Nohem, who I really respect, a wonderful man who believes in ethical archaeology. I have to agree with him because I've seen a dig and it kind of hurt my heart to see that done to the earth. And now they use new sciences that can see through. There's a snake image that Sam was telling me about that they haven't dug, but they know it's there, and he does ceremony there. So because a lot of things, unfortunately, I'm mixed about that right now. My head's a little mixed about that because I felt bad when I saw the destruction of archaeology and what, because you miss things unless you have a TIPO there, unless you have a Native American there to somehow explain. I am sorry, but I really believe that the person of the culture should be there. That's like me trying to understand something. I go to England and I'm digging up King Richard. What's this weird guy? What's that hump on his back? Must be some kind of race of people. I would be interpreting it from my point of view.
Yeah.
So when you're interpreting another culture, you're using your point of view from the way you're raised.
Yeah.
And we can't help it. We have to make great effort to get outside of our worldview and expand it and get out of our own way.
Yeah.
I appreciate that's why I'm looking forward to Dr. Paulette Steves on June 25th.
Yeah.
She'll join us, an Indigenous scholar and archaeologist.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, James? Maybe we should take another look at that artifact that he says is a mammoth on that stone. Can we do that and point it out? So we can.
Yeah, actually, Sam, Mark or Sam said it was. Wait a minute, let me check. Hey, Sam, are you there?
Yeah, Sam's waiting. Hey, Sam, come sit down.
I need some backup over here. Come on. Where are you?
Yeah.
It's my buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam.
Yeah, he's coming.
Okay, I want to see what Sam thinks about this. Sam, hey.
Yeah, so ask him.
Okay, so there was a carving on the back of the stone, the quarry stone, the stone in the Skibitsky site, grinding stone. And I think it was you who said you thought it was a turtle. Can I show it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so here we go. We're going to have the contest. Is it a turtle or is it a mammoth? What is it?
This is research on the go.
Yeah.
It's something. We can all agree it's something. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always take things from all angles, Dr. Harrod, because I've learned that there's more to what meets the eye in these things. Okay, I'm going to share the screen.
Okay. Here it goes.
Okay, Sam. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
The one on the right.
It's right there in the middle of your screen. You see it? The grinding stone?
Yeah, but on the right of the grinding stone.
To the right face of it, yes.
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 It's a turtle.
Yep, that's what two people said.
Or a New York pigeon.
Where is the turtle?
A New York pigeon?
It's inverted, Jim. It's climbing up. It's ascending from the travesty from down here.
All right, he's in a weird mood today.
I turned my head around.
Yeah, thanks a lot there, kiddo.
Yeah.
On the left side of it.
Oh, yeah.
The left side, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's something. It was there
Yeah.
on purpose. Just leave
So-
it at that.
Well, since we have Sam on, Sam, you've been listening to our discussion for the last hour. Comments and insight, because we really appreciate the fact that you've brought the indigenous view to this field of archaeology, helping us understand the interpretation and the history and the depth of history that's being revealed here.
A lot of what we've been doing, especially with working in, I just got back from North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana on an immersion trip with college students from University of Dayton. And so we got to do a lot of things out there, and the students got to go on a traditional buffalo hunt and process. And so we had youth from the community that we were teaching how to cut up the buffalo and how to do the butchering. And they had a ball.
I bet.
But a lot of this, what we're doing is, I work with a lot of the indigenous students, but also college students. In my reason for working with the college students, they're paying to be there, but they're the future educators. A lot of times you get people that are already educated, and you can't change them. So working with the college students, trying to get a lot of that things corrected. And it's one of the things when the university students were out there, a lot of stuff that they seen wasn't in their history books. And they were just amazed at some and appalled at others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing with Tyler's work and what we've been doing, with working through these different sites and stuff and trying to find some of the other information. I know Dr. Gramley, the site in the Blue Licks, we actually found a Mastodon Tusk stuff down there, but they also found a mammoth tooth. And that's only the second time that they have found, mammoth remains in the same, and both of them been Dr. Gramley's, the Bowser Road site and now the Blue Licks. But documenting a lot of this, and having people like Jim Harrod and Mike Gramley and stuff that are open, to help, clarify.
Yeah.
From a scientific point of view, and then the agent. A lot of times when we're looking at things, we're not really interested in having a lot of carbon dating done because of the way that people have done it. But we're now, with a lot of the newer techniques and stuff out, they're able to carbon date and do DNA and stuff without, doing, significant damage to a piece.
But also, isn't it the education that you have a hand in giving the next generation of scholars to be on a horse, to handle the tools, to be in nature, to go on a bison hunt, to be immersed in the actual activities on the land, and let that inform you to live for at least a moment as the very people they're studying lived? that's a big piece of the education that the previous generations didn't necessarily have, right?
Right.
How much
Right.
does that experience inform to see through the eyes, to live the life, even for a day, that the very people they're studying lived? I mean, that's a
Right.
huge part of an education, I think, that
Yep.
you're adding.
And, you know, they all heard about Standing Rock, and, you know, they seen pictures and this, and we actually took them to the Standing Rock. So they got to be able to see it. Then we went to a park where the Conqueror stones and stuff were, which were part of a few thousand-year-old trail along the rivers. And the communities and stuff removed those Conqueror stones that were actually used for maps and markings down through the Missouri and other places in Cannonball. And so then, you know, they got to see those stones. They got to see some of the stuff that was there, you know, long before, you know, they sailed their boats to come
And
to
so
North
by
America.
seeing it, you'll recognize it when you see it again. That's what
Right.
Yuri Klachala was telling us, that when you actually see these artifacts in situ, you're able to recognize them when they show up elsewhere unexpectedly.
Right. And then, you know, they got to sit and talk to, you know, direct descendants, RJ American Horse.
Right.
Yeah, he's a veteran. He was there. We sat and talked. And then some of the other guys from the, you know, from the Red Elk and Black Elk families and stuff were there, and then Lone Soldier. So they got to talk to some of these people and their families that they only seen. And then we went through and we cleaned cemeteries and stuff, and then we did traditional removing of the flags and then burning them through ceremony and stuff the way we do it.
To participate in the ceremony is another huge piece of the education. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for the work that you all are doing.
Yeah.
So.
Put in multiple worlds.
We still got a lot more time to torment people here, so I just keep going.
All right.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sam. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you checking in.
All right. And James, thank you as well. Yeah. Good insight.
Oh, also, James, you spent time in Nova Scotia where the Vikings were. Maybe you could help Tyler out on the
Nova
Viking
Scotia
history.
story. I mean the Viking story.
The Viking story.
Because coming from Maine, I mean,
mostly that's where the Micmac of our lineage comes from, and what I was told was, and Mary, my mom, they were brought there by a whale that interpreted many ways.
Yeah,
like a ship. Yeah,
I don't know. You know, I have to say that Mary's often right, though. She's a very curious lady. She would come up with these things. Like when she told me about the Vikings, she says, "You're so tall because you probably got some of that Viking blood." Okay. I like that. I don't mind having.
What a fun mother. Yes.
She was a trip. You would have loved Mary. She was
absolutely.
Funky little lady.
Yeah.
Can you say hi, shout out to my producer, Lizette Savalos?
Please, let's introduce her.
Yeah, thank you, James, for your participation.
Just say one thing, this Howard family is Viking. I had my DNA done, and we can trace the Howard lineage back to a burial in a plot of the first king of Sweden.
That's right back to the Vikings.
Viking history. The other is tomorrow I'll be headed up to we have a cottage in Nova Scotia, and it happens to be near the Mi'kmaq Cape Split, and that's all sacred land.
Yeah.
And
can I do a shout out to Lizette now?
Yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
Lizette, say hi.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Can you please explain, Lizette, why you're helping in all this stuff?
Oh my goodness. What I see about Tyler's work is that it obliterates the 3 Ps, the deadly 3 Ps in the world, which is the presumptions, the preconceptions, and the prejudices that are just prevalent in every. And what I love about it is that it just keeps she keeps her mind open to new ideas. And we have found so many amazing things that people need to know about.
Yeah.
We have to, like somebody said in her film, we have to have a holistic view of history in this country.
Mm.
That's all I have to say. Thank
Wow.
you, Tyler. And thank you all. Thank you
Yeah.
to the Kayamungi
Kelly
Institute
has
for
her
having us here.
hand up.
Thank you, Lizette, for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, bringing the stories that we need to hear.
And Tyler, what were you saying?
Kelly has her hand up.
Yeah, we can add Kelly in the conversation
While
as
you're
well.
doing that, I just want to say that I spent yesterday at a
Thank you.
very interesting event and met a woman who's a trustee of the Crow Canyon, where we went and have spent time and know a lot of the people there. And she was saying that there's even stories, there's even evidence that she wants to bring to the table for the Polynesian voyages, finding the West Coast.
Right.
Right. And I mean, multiple threads to the tapestry.
It's a discussion that we've
Many
been
people.
having for 30
I also
years
want to
and-
cite
Yeah.
the woman that showed us the Bernafal, Marie Christin, and in France,
Yeah,
who showed
the-
us
the
the
cave.
Bernafal cave. And we were having a discussion of what's the legacy. And she said, you must understand that the Paleolithic people of the Ice Age were not interested in building monuments. They considered Earth herself the temple. And they may have modified it a bit, but they weren't out there building. They were living on the earth. They didn't always leave evidence behind, but they were there. And much of their culture, if you can understand their mindset and decode the artifacts they did leave and understand their relationship with the earth,
It's a beautiful
that's
point.
the legacy that she most wants to treasure. And just as James was talking about the rich spiritual culture and seeing it everywhere. That's a mindset I think we need to behold once again. But yeah, let's go to Kelly.
I will. On a personal note, I just wanted to follow up on James's comment as well. Growing up in Maine, I always felt so much more connected to Nova Scotia than I did to the US.
Really?
And my family history does come that direction, but there's something about that part of the world that it has a depth of history too that just continues to reveal itself. So
And
we'll
it's so wild. It's so wild. Right?
I like that fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get Kelly up. Kelly, where are you? Here we are. There she is.
Hey there.
Hi. I just really wanted to say thank you. This has truly been like an amazing journey because I started watching I started coming to the Zooms like right when James Harrod and Richard Gramley started presenting here, and this whole institute has like helped me in my life, and I've been, doing my own research and finding my own spot in this organization that we have right here. And I feel like this is like, you really inspire me, and it's really cool. Like, you're so brave. When we were on Richard Gramley's and you just kept asking question and question and question and question, I was just like, that is so cool. Like, because it's annoying sometimes that some people, right? Like, but I ask so many questions too, and I'm not brave enough to do that. Like, you're brave, and that is like something that is inspiring me. Like, you don't care, you want the information and you're going to ask the questions. Yes. And I just am really like inspired by you, and I want to say thank you for doing all this work.
Yeah,
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Don't you find, Tyler, that it's easier for us females to ask questions than to dictate to others? I think that is a skill set for women to constantly question.
Well,
I found a very good comfort zone, and I know you have as well.
Without being a cliche, men don't like to ask questions, but I think they should know. But it's not, you always ask questions. Laura will ask questions to every plumber, every electrician, that means she's in the middle of every conversation asking questions. No, Laura, I know that. No, you don't. I'm asking more questions.
Yeah, but I need to understand.
Yeah.
You may know the answer, but tell me, because I'd like to know.
Yeah.
It's my curiosity is from the stones that I find myself, and I collect, and I've been finding portable rock art and carved things besides arrowheads for 10 years now, and it's just it's amazing to actually have a group of people that also understand this. And not only am I finding the artifacts, but now I'm learning how to go into ecstatic trance with this organization. And I'm just trying to find my key, like what can I help do in this whole global consciousness of the world and us waking up. And I feel like this is part of it. And just being here and listening to you has been just really inspiring to me, like a woman that just is really doing what she wants. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and Tyler is such a strong
woman who's doing what she wants.
Exactly.
Right there.
Yeah, a great example of that. So
I want to say
thank you
ecstatic
for
trance
that
is another line of research. It's another way to enter into the experiential eternal
Aspect of
now
it,
that
yeah.
our ancestors, that they were doing ritual and ceremony and finding great sacred trust in that. Why shouldn't we enter in that same space? We have indigenous roots as well. We have a lineage where this is
Sam Briggs was speaking
part of our
about
birthright.
lacrosse.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. Sam Briggs spoke about lacrosse on his YouTube video, and me and James spoke after a little bit, and it was just really cool to understand that everything
Even that's
was
a sacred
spiritual.
quest, isn't it?
Everything like we think it's a game, but everything's not. Everything was meant something. They did something like this game that we just thought who was going to win. It was actually because someone was sick and they were going to play the game and
to
try and fix
influence nature, to influence the outcome, to have agency in the energetics around us. I know, fascinating.
Yeah, it is great.
Can I say something about collectors, just briefly, because there's such a contention between Native American people and collectors, and I just wanted to give my observations as somebody who's met collectors and who has observed. I had some things that I found in Bear Mountain, and I returned it to the Michaeline and Chief Man, because I knew that I was of their tribe, their people. They didn't have many things, artifacts. And so when I find them now, I try to reunite it with the people, descendants, or return or leave it there. And that's something I've learned. When we take things out of situ, sometimes it later messes up a discovery, and sometimes it could be sacred and we don't even know. So that's a little risky. But the good part about collectors, let me just get to that part, is there has been so many things destroyed. For instance, there was a wonderful movie a couple of years back by Native Americans about how some Episcopalian woman had kept all their stuff and kept it safe while it was being destroyed left, right, and center. So now that tribe built a museum to put those things in. Right. So if the collector hadn't been there, you know what I'm saying? So
I love your view. I love your view on that. I'm actually right here where I find most of my artifacts, and which I'm learning to understand, like things are supposed to stay where they should sometimes. So I built kind of like an offering in my creek, and that's where most of them are. And I can walk what I would say 4 yards, and the creek is right there. So most of them stay there, and I sometimes bring them, take pictures of them, do what Sam said, and draw them. But I do hold much respect.
Yeah, it's good that you work with Sam as a mentor. That's smart.
Well, I want to say also, when you pass a bookstore, especially a used bookstore, go browse around in the Archeology Center and all those books. I found a book that was about a woman. I invited her. I'm trying to coax her to come on. But she and her husband, decades ago, found a big bunch of beautiful boulders in the American Southwest, bought the land, and built their boulder house, this extreme architecture among the boulders. And then they started to notice that there were petroglyphs there, and that the sun would come in and light it up. And then they'd go, oh, well, I guess it was the equinox or the solstice. And they started to live amongst the light coming through, because they had created window spaces, glass around it, where the light could still come through and activate these centers. And then they discovered, oh my God, after the fact, this was the 60s, they didn't know at the time, that this was a ceremonial site. And that we now understand how frequently there are sites that are solar calendars that mark these times of the year.
We're attracted to the site because of the incredible
it's
power and beauty
beautiful.
of it and not realizing,
Yeah, and nobody had claimed it at the time. And so eventually she was telling me it was bought by the tribe of the area, and now they consider it a beautiful site and a heritage site. So it went back to them. So a good ending to the story. But yeah, there's artifacts all around us that we don't even recognize. And about your story, that there are useful archaeologists documenting it, even decades gone by, and preserving it. When we were in Australia, we were shown the film by our hosts of 10 canoes.
Oh, yeah.
And the backstory goes that the film director went to the historical preserves and archives, found, hey, they were building canoes, and employed the local Aboriginals to relearn how to build their canoes for the film.
It was a tradition that was lost and brought back.
Because this film was about before the white man came. So he wanted to tell the story of how they lived around canoes. And they thanked him to say, thank you for helping us reclaim our heritage that was lost to us. Thank you to the filmmaker for employing us to do these. And thank you to the archaeologists who preserved the knowledge. So, I mean, we need to come together, right? We need to come together and help.
It's a relationship.
We need to understand it's all our heritage. We need to understand we share the same ancestors when you go back far enough.
Delineate that is their heritage.
Yeah.
It is Native American history.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
And stop taking what ain't yours.
Yeah, that's so true.
Okay, how do we do that?
Can I ask one question to Tyler about that? Because
Sure, go ahead.
That's my biggest question. So having this knowledge, it's so confusing to me because there's 35 tribes in Virginia, we think. I mean, I don't know who we is, but they say but only 7 are recognized. And they say there's
who? You mean federal or state recognized? Do you know what that means?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What?
She said
no, I don't understand what it means all the way. That's why I'm here. Like, I want to learn and understand what I'm supposed to do, because I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and Sam is the one who educated me on that. So I'm glad to be able to be a little smarter now. And I'm glad to be able to tell you my brief education in federally and state recognized tribes, recognized by the United States of America, recognized by the people, by the government, so the forces that the prisoner of war camps or reservations, right? And the people were dispersed, and they lived on, and they got mixed with other people sometimes, or other tribes, and they're still here. And some of them, like the state recognized tribes, there's a few of them, but they can actually directly show their lineage. And you know that the only human race, I could say, or part, is indigenous people have to prove the quantum of their blood, like horses. Do Jewish people have to prove the quantum of their blood to be Jewish? However, in America, we have state and federally recognized. So if you're not recognized, and then the state people they are being, tromped upon and their stuff taken, I don't personally, I understand it was a good thing to start with, and there's always, the path to good always leads to, it doesn't always work out, right? But it's not, sometimes those things don't work out because in the Black movement, I'm going to go back to my mother's NAACP days, everybody joined together for the Black movement. They didn't try to trace their lineage back to Africa. They didn't have to. And the Native American movement, or what is here, Native Americans need people. They need a lot of people. And when that's part of what people do when they conquer, they divide and conquer. So if you're not, and then the federally recognized are beholding to the government that gives, they have to play games, they have to play ball. There's a lot of destructiveness. There needs to be revamped. There needs to be revamped. The whole thing has to be revamped right now.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's a good thing, but at the same time, state recognized people are suffering.
Right.
And when I talk to them, they spend all their time proving who they are or
Right.
trying to, and it's very disruptive. If I had to sit here and say, I come from Quebec and my great grandfather was a mayor and blah, 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 and my, there's a good amount of sadness to that. A cat is a cat is a cat.
Right.
It's like, why should they have to spend so much time trying to, if they live in the red road, if they're walking the red path.
But if I'm finding artifacts, and I'm finding things that could help, that's where I get confused. I don't want to ever disrespect any culture.
Yeah.
And I keep being shown these things, and that's where it gets confusing, because I'm literally right here and I made my own memorial, and the stones stay where they were. Like, I have a bunch up here, but they're not from here.
Document and share.
Yeah.
Document and share. You've got some good
Documenting
contacts.
and your intent is clear and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to continue with that, Kelly.
You're not
and-
selling them. You're not selling them. You're
No,
not
never.
Oh, no. Okay, so there's at some point maybe you'll find a TIPO down there, a tribal historical preservation officer might be able to.
Good.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I've
I
been
think
trying.
that
Well,
one.
thank you so much.
Thank you,
appreciate
Kelly.
it.
I appreciate
Photographs,
Yeah, you really
stories,
ask the questions.
details, all
Yeah.
the be the
and
yeah.
and go.
Thank you, Tyler and Lizette. Everything I saw today was so amazing. Like, I felt every minute.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
And Tony has his hand up. Hello, Tony.
Well, I'm sorry I was not able to get on earlier today, but here, let me, just a general comment. And I'm hearing all sorts of good intentions. This is sort of the conundrum of archaeology.
Yeah.
As soon as you go into a site, you are modifying a site. It will never be the same again.
True.
As soon as you collect anything from it, the site will never be the same again. At the same time, and this happens very regularly, indigenous things disappear with time. Chaco Canyon, all the rock arts on friable sandstone, is disappearing. And some of the tribes that claim heritage from there, and just as Kelly said, there are 27 tribes that claim heritage from Chaco Canyon, but some of them feel it should go. It was meant to pass. It's meant to be ephemeral, just like the Navajo sand paintings are meant to be ephemeral.
I see.
So it's a hard thing. It's a wonderful thing to love the objects and respect them, but one has to be awfully careful that they're not clearing out all the objects at the same time, or really changing the site forever, that it never can be looked at by the people who were there originally, or by future generations, however we decide to do this. And of course, in the meantime, the museums of the world have priceless things that are important to cultures very different than where they're now residing, and that's always an issue. So sorry I wasn't in earlier. This sounds like a very lively discussion, and I can see this from both sides. A good friend of mine who I collaborated with doing research acquired Navajo medicine rattles, celestial Navajo medicine rattles, in pawn shops. And she had a large collection of these. And as soon as she passed, these were returned to the Navajo Nation.
Beautiful.
Now, they were in pawn shops. It wasn't that she was doing something different, but still it didn't feel right that they should be other than with the Navajo Nation.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just my 2 cents, and I appreciate what Kelly's saying and what Tyler's saying, and it's a delicate balance. And by the way, I heard the woman with the house in Arizona speaking a few years ago.
Oh, yes.
So I didn't know what to think of it then. Her talk was not well received. I have to tell you that.
But the good news is it went back to native people.
Yeah.
Well, that had not happened then. She was talking about the delight of giving parties among rock art and
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't know then. She didn't know.
So yeah, I mean, but again, there was the intention was good. It was simply, it's very hard to understand why people would not want to preserve things that are ephemeral. But again, we have to recognize this conundrum, this dilemma of.
I think we're all thirsting for our common heritage. I want to respect those Native Americans. I appreciate that in our work, Goodman gave us the legitimate path back. Let's go to the people of Europe. That's your lineage. Okay, fine. I'll trace that one.
Yeah.
But I
If
mean,
I could
I
also-
really want to say that can we get back to honoring the earth, honoring life as sacred? Can we
Learn
back to
from-
what the wisdom is that's going to carry us forward into a future we can all agree on?
Absolutely.
How do we find our way home? How do we get back into right relation with
And the problem
ourselves and
is,
the world around us and our place in it?
really, really good values push us in opposite directions here. And how do we sort between them? So
Right.
this is
Yeah.
an amazing dialogue, and I really appreciate what Tyler says on this. And Kelly has brought in a heartfelt perspective, which I respect too.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony, as
Thank
usual.
you. I'll
Great.
shut up now.
No.
We appreciate your contribution as
Yeah.
always, Tony.
Yeah,
And
great contribution.
Tyler, where do we go from here?
Final thoughts.
How-
Final thoughts.
We are trying to find a worldview where we can all find peace, right? We're trying to come together as one human body that's steering the ship. We're trying to honor our ancestors wherever we are. We're trying to find our way forward.
Right.
I think that you're putting some very important contributions to help us right our relationship with our past, to do better. I find what James said about, I carry the burden of my ancestors and I'm trying to make right. I'm trying to unburden myself and come together. I think in a sense, we're all trying to do that.
Right.
We're all, how do we do that? It's a struggle. I trip on my own worldview constantly. I'm trying to expand it. I'm trying to, as Kelly said, question everything and go to many sources, put my finger to the wind through many sources and say, where do I go from here? That's a universal quest that humankind's been at since day one. Who am I? Where am I going? Where did I come from? How do I make sense of the world? How do I find my place in it? We're all displaced. We've all been displaced out of a worldview that made sense. We're all trying to find our way. We're all on a quest. You've been on a quest. You've shared it with us today. We appreciate what you're trying to do. And what are your final thoughts on this? Because when we share our journeys, we can all learn from one another.
Well, we'll see the actual film when it's out and series, because it's too long a subject to be merely a film. I think, hold on, let me turn this down because it's making me have a really bright nose and I'm not happy. Hold on. All right. Vanity does work. Let me turn this thing off. It's too bright. I'll know at the end of the film, at the end of the studies, right? I mean, I don't know at this point. My conclusions are that Native Americans need to handle the land. It's their country. I do believe they do better with the land. I think there's a great fear for them to actually be stewards. Something's going on in Australia right now, if I'm not incorrect, that people are having a big problem because the indigenous people there are going to be able to, the Aboriginals are going to be able to use their own land. And there's a fear of that. And why? Why? Those are human beings who are going to do what these human beings are doing, which is being stewards of the land. But there's a big problem. I think that they should be stewards of the land here in America.
Well
and
said.
I think that the whole idea of real estate has to be rethought because it's hurting a lot of people internationally. The real estate deal is not working. I think a lot of wars and everything is due to the real estate deal, and it's about greed. And all the destruction of Native American sites persist. And the solar thing has to be rethought. They really don't have a cure for what's happening to the earth. The panels have cadmium in them. They only last 20 years. What's going to happen? They're going to throw them away. Lithium is from Africa. Cobalt, and the batteries explode. I can tell you as a drone pilot that those batteries are very dangerous. So we haven't come to a solution, and we're going to push that new kind of energy out and get rid of the other energy so that certain people can make a ton of money. And
It's not
But
really
this-
a lasting solution
Right.
the way we're going about
No,
it.
something has to be there to control people who are making there. Somebody has to be controlling those profiteering people, so that is a human rights issue. The issues of human rights are met,
Mhm.
and there's your issue, because there's the United Nations, but it ain't working.
Yeah.
You weren't happy when you appeared at the United Nations on their
Well,
review
they
of
didn't change anything.
human
I
rights?
mean, there's still preemptive forced eviction. The people are being thrown out in 5 hours, and nobody cares or hears about it. And oh, it's just a bunch of poor people, or it's just a bunch of hipsters, or it's just a bunch of artists, or it's just a
Whatever,
bunch of, or just a bunch
They
of
don't count, they're not worthy, they don't
Yeah.
matter.
Well, this is the role you're playing. You're documenting this and you're bringing it to our attention. And I mean, coming back to the fact that you're using this medium of filmmaking as a means to tell stories, to educate us, to bring us forward. That's the important factor here. And I think that there is a shift in change, but there's
Not
big
fast enough.
war happening between the outer technology and the inner technology.
Mm.
We really want to strengthen the concept of intertechnology when you talk about that intuition, that right action, all those elements that you described with the Native American cultures, but we should all contain those same values in our own lives, and that we're going to be
That's
more
the
and more,
quest, isn't it,
yeah,
ultimately?
we're being pulled more and more and more in the outer world, this outer technology thing, this AI world that's coming about, and that we have to strengthen this inner technology for us to survive as a humanity.
Just to
And-
maintain our own internal GPS, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have that.
Right.
So
Tyler.
it's not easy being in the trenches.
No.
I want to say, Tyler, and I commend your bravery and your fortitude
Right.
and your fierceness.
Yeah.
So
I'm fierce.
Oh, and well, thank you. So,
And your
Tony said he has one
creativity.
final comment. Tony, you wanted to say one more thing?
Yeah, so I could. One of the interesting things is virtually all lands now are thought to be sacred, at least in the United States, to some indigenous group. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very delicate balance. And
Yeah.
at some point, we have to stop thinking of it being us and them. Somehow, we have to find a way to, and I think Tyler is getting at that,
Right.
to make this combination. I read an article a couple of years ago about we can't see the world as tribal anymore. We have to see it as a hive where everybody relates to everybody else's survival. In
Right.
terms of what happens, it's simple to say greed, but there is another perspective that novelist John Mather spoke to me when we were talking about what's happening. And he said, Tony, there is a rule that whatever we let happen will happen. It's not, we use the word greed, but in fact, it's a competitive world. And if we allow something to happen, and there are 5 companies that can do it, each one wants to be the one that does it.
Right.
Is it their fault? No, I mean, it's not that they're looking necessarily for making vast amounts of money. Then they want to keep their workforce from being laid off, and things like that. So it's not a one-dimensional problem at all. But the problem does, I think, relate to how we legislate and how we
And that
connect
relates to our
or don't
worldview.
connect to the people that legislate. And I
Yeah.
could talk on that for a while because I have an understanding of what's going on, but I won't unless you ask me to.
Okay. We'll have you come
why
back.
don't we have
Sure.
you talk about that when you come and talk to us about the new findings on the James Webb, of which
Okay.
you worked? And I also want to say that then that's why we're working on worldview. That's why we're trying to move the dial through dialogue. And Tyler's trying to do it through film and investigation. Because when our worldview contains what we do and what we allow ourselves to do, when we get that right, then I think the rest will follow.
Right.
Right? That dictates our actions, our values, our what we let happen. Tyler, last words.
Thank you, Tony.
I
Thank
just want to
you.
say
Thank
the
you.
world. I'm talking about worldview in this film because the worldview, considering that the doctrine of discovery still affects the laws of this country. In fact, it was used by Ruth Bader Ginsburg against one of the Haudenosaunee or I think it was the Oneida Nation, when we're still using something that says that these people are not human beings.
Right. Right.
That's not acceptable.
Right.
No, hold it. You said something. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who we all admire for various reasons, used this doctrine against the Explain, please. I'm not aware of that story.
It was a case with, and Sam can probably tell you more about this. It was a case where there was a battle over land, and it was one of the nations. It was the Oneida Nation, as I remember, and she used the Doctrine of Discovery, parts of the Doctrine of Discovery, which is part of American law, or the concept of it, so that they lost the case. Ask Sam about getting land back.
Yeah, I'm shocked. Wow.
Yeah, you know, the Bakasset don't have their own land where they're on the Watapet where the burials are. So there's, you know, they don't even have they're not even allowed to be near their, it's just very
Human rights.
The Doctrine of Discovery has to go. You can listen to Buffy St. Marie about this. There's many, many wonderful people that talk about it.
Yeah.
And
We've only been talking about North America. When we were, yeah, I mean, South America has its own issues as well. I remember being in the Tulum Cave in Mexico on a day when it was a sacred site, and that beautiful, was it Tulum Cave? It was near there. That beautiful stalagmite tree. It looked like the tree of life, where stalagmites and stalactites came together. Sacred site. We walk in, and there's many natives conducting their ceremony in secret. And they said, don't tell people when we go out what we're doing. I'm like, we're just honored to be here to see the ceremonies and partake in them. And they allowed us to sit there and quietly and join in. Yeah.
A tourist can go to the site at Rocky Woods, but Cora can't sleep there overnight. But, you know, so there is a lot of problems going on. There are laws that are happening, but they're not, there's things that have to be corrected. And that would have to be in conjunction with Native Americans who are actively trying to save and reclaim their history.
And our instinct is for justice. When we hear about these stories, the problem is our media is not doing enough to share these stories. It's independents like you that are helping tell
like this to have the story be told.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Thank you so much,
Tyler. Thank you so much for a great presentation and continue your work. And we look forward to see
when they're streaming. Look forward to her films.
Yeah,
and what we can do.
Always Here, is that they
Always Hear, the name of her forthcoming film.
That's the next one.
And Blues for 475 is the one that's in post-production right now, about the 300 artists at 475 Kent who were in 5 hours told to leave their home. And I followed them to see the effect on them later.
And you see what displacement does to people and how it affects their lives adversely.
Well, again, thank you so much.